Hey everybody, it's Justin from Bittner Built, and today I have my jigsaw friends here from 4 of the awesome contractor brands. There's no lemons in this group. They're all pretty good jigsaws. So how do I approach this? There's 5,000 other videos out there. How am I going to be different? I'm the little guy on the block, right? If you're watching my video, you've probably watched many other videos along these lines before me. So what I've decided to do is, instead of emulating like Project Farm, who has all these scientific ones, or the guy who's just like, I'm gonna run 2 of these through 50 foot of board and whichever one wins, it's the manliest. That video is cool too, but it's been done. So what I'm gonna try and do is focus on all the other things that really influence your use of these jigsaws, the things that you want to know, because they all cut really well. So what's the other stuff that differentiates it? And there are big things that differentiate these, and there's no clear winner. There's very like, this one's awesome and this one's awesome and this one's, but in very different ways. So I want to go and look at some very different stuff. And so instead of calling it a review, we're going to call it an in-depth look today on Bittner Built. All right, the devil's in the details, as they say. So all of these saws cut well. If you watch any of those other videos, you see like they all do very well, and there's not a huge difference between these guys. But there is a ton of little feature function differences. You could have the best cutting saw in the world, but if it has a couple things that really annoy you about it, you're going to end up having a negative opinion of that saw overall. And maybe you want to pick a different one, maybe even from the same brand, just not that one. So I want to look at a lot of the little stuff. I want to look at viewing angle. How far forward do you have to lean over the saw in order to be able to see the blade? Because you must see the blade in order to cut. If I have to like squirrel my body around in order to see this blade, it's going to affect my cutting ability. It's going to throw off my center of gravity, a whole bunch of stuff. So that's an important one to look at. The beveling features on these, some of them are amazing. And when it's amazing, it makes you want to use that feature on a saw. And then some of them make you want to punt the saw to the corner of the room. Some of these saws come out of the box 90 degrees square, and other ones don't, even when the detent says it's at 90 degrees. And so you have to adjust it. A lot of people don't realize that they really should take a square to their jigsaw every once in a while, because even though their detent says they're at 90, you might not be. One of these brands had such an issue with that I called corporate. I drove to a service center with them, and I was just told that they were defective and I must swap them out for other ones. And then I saw similar stuff in the ones I swapped them out for from a different store. So we're going to talk about that. Blowers. Blowers are the new thing. Some of these have okay blowers. One of these has they're the king of the blowers. The wind speeds that we caught off that were amazing. We're going to look at cutting tile and laminate, which typically aren't in these like showdowns. We're going to look at cutting metal and some issues that I had with that and talk about it. We're going to look at all the little accessories that come with these guys that you're going to lose in a week anyway. But we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt and try and look at them for a little bit. And of course, we're going to look at the oscillation features on here. I really want to understand on these if the oscillation is a smooth progression, or if it jumps really high, or if it's like no tear out, crazy tear out. Like, I want to know how this works and if it differs between these different saws, because in my honest, like, the way I honestly use this saw, I either have it cut to 0 and I'm doing a clean cut, or I crank it up all the way and I'm just ripping something because I don't care. So I'm interested to know for myself if there's a difference, if I can finesse this tool more. That might be the way to say it right. So let's go ahead and dive in. I'm gonna be very jumpy about it and kind of broad in certain things. I'm gonna show the winners and the losers for each one of these tests. That way this isn't an hour-long video, because I have hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of footage. This video took me over a week to do. Because I really want to try and bring you good stuff, and I want to bring you different stuff. So, all right, let's get into it. Viewing angle is definitely one of the important metrics that I wanted to take a look at. If you can't see where you're cutting on your jigsaw, you're not going to have a very accurate cut. Now, jigsaws are one of these tools where sometimes you stand to the side, and so obviously when you're standing to the side, you have a very clear line of sight, but because of your perspective on this, this might not be the cleanest cut direction. You definitely have the most accurate cut when you're looking directly top down at the blade and you can see exactly where you're going. So figuring out how far this has to rotate, how far your body has to go forward in order to see the cut line is very important. In order to test viewing angle, the way I constructed our jig was I have this horizontal boom arm, and so this boom arm can come out and go back in. And what we would do is I had another iPhone right here. I would position it so that there is a line that I scribed onto this metal. I would start the line right at this coupler every single time, and then I would move the jigsaw so that the iPhone that was here would perfectly see the front of the jig. And then we would move the pole out slowly until we could finally just see the blade on the jigsaw, and then I would take calipers to measure exactly how the distance was on the pole between my scribed line and this, and that would give me a distance. So we use this distance as our guide into how far you had to lean forward before you could see the blade. So in our results, all of these jigsaws scored around the 4-inch mark for looking forward except for 2. So in the second place position, which was at around 3¼ inches, was the Makita XVJ04. And it's pretty obvious as to why. It's a very tall jigsaw and it's very open and cut back right here. If there hadn't have been this little hump right here, it would have even been better and maybe even have won. But for this jigsaw, it's very straight in the front, and so just to be able to lean a little bit forward, you're going to be able to see the blade. So this was my second place contender. There really was no loser. It was either normal or better and then best, which was the 331 Dewalt D handle. This one is because, again, we're tapering very close, and then this guard in the front. It's just opens it up so well that this scored a 2.25 inches. So half of what a lot of these other ones were. So this has an amazing viewing angle. So when you're using it, rather than having to really lean over, you can almost stay completely standing up and just barely lean forward. So it makes for a very ergonomically comfort cutting saw. Our next item to look at is the blower on these. That seems to be the new buzz thing that they've been adding into jigsaws for the last little bit. What I did was I took my wind speed monitor and I set it to detect max, and then I moved it around the entirety of the front of each one of these saws to detect even if it was like strong outward flow to the sides or if it was strong flow to the front. I wanted to see what the max wind speed was coming off these units. So a majority of these units landed in the 300 feet per minute range. 2 of them were our duds, and that was the D-handled Dewalt 331 and the D-handled J03 in Makita. They scored around 120 each, so very low. The interesting thing on that one is this one has a blower switch. So a lot of these don't even have blower on and off switch. This one doesn't need one because the airspeed coming off of it is so low that it was very undetectable. So I wonder if the switch is marketing. Who knows? This guy right here has been my personal jigsaw for the past 2 years, so anytime your tool loses, it hurts a little bit, doesn't it? When you watch these reviews, you're like, oh, not my tool. But oh well, that's how it happens, right? That's how buying a new tool happens. The winners in this guy, like I said, almost everybody's in the 300 range. This Bosch almost tricked me really good. This has a giant air vent on the front, which when I did the tests on this, put it at over 1,000. So I was really excited about this one until I figured out it's this blower. I don't know why they don't point that blower down because, oh, that would clear the field real easy. So we had to cover over this vent, and then it was in the 300 range. The big winner was the Milwaukee barrel at 630 feet per minute wind speed. So double what most of these are and even 6 times what our losers are. Now the king of the blowers was the Milwaukee D with 610 feet per minute on its blower capacity. So you are the king, my friend. Either double to 6 times what some of these other jigsaws are producing in their wind speed coming out of here. So if clearing out debris in front of your jigsaw has ever been a pet peeve of yours, this definitely might be a jigsaw to consider. Our next feature might not be important to everybody, but it's actually a really important one for me, and that is a dust collection attachment. I might be the 1%, but you know, viva the 1% in this. I do a predominant amount of my tool usage in a shop, so I want to use dust collection. And many of these saws have dust collection capabilities, but they don't come with it. You have to buy it after the fact. So out of all of these saws, the 2 Milwaukees and this specific BOSCH are the only ones that have it. This is the newest BOSCH, the 50. So when we did our tests, we placed fine and coarse particulates directly where the blade is, started up the dust collector. So this was hooked up to a dust collector, not to a shop vac. And we first let it sit for a couple seconds to see how much dust was being pulled out, and then we moved the saw forward and back. On both of the Milwaukees, there was little to no dust movement until we started to move it forward and back, and it seems like their design might be that this opening behind the guide wheel almost acts like a shovel. And so when the dust particles hit there and lifted it up, that's when it would get sucked over. It didn't remove everything, but it did remove something. So what I call a comprehensive dust collection, no, but it does collect some stuff. The BOSCH, on the other hand, that was the winner out of here. It did have a decent amount of suction right off the bat. It also had good suction once you moved it. And really, when you take a look at the engineering of it, this is a really cool dust collection. Like, kudos to BOSCH on trying to innovate on something that might not be important to everybody. So this dust collector folds up and it kind of snaps in half, which is cool. So it's easy to put like in your tool bag, and then it folds out. But then because it pivots like this, when you put it inside, you can move it to the right or to the left, depending on what your functionality needs are, where the hose is out of the way. For example, you might put it out from your tool. And then I measured with calipers. This plastic piece inserts so close to the guide wheel, it's only like 0.3 inches, where these are 0.6 inches and they're higher up. So this gets it right where the action is, and so thus it creates more suction power right where the cutting is happening. So if dust collection is your thing, the BOSCH, this is definitely the one to be looking at. Our next criteria is the beveling action on these jigsaws. So that enables you to turn the jigsaw to cut up to a 45-degree angle, and some others have standard detents for angles in between. This one was some big winners and some big, big losers. And then, of course, you have this BOSCH barrel that doesn't even have beveling action, so it doesn't even get brought to the party. The very worst at all of these are the Makita. All of them require a Allen key in order to adjust. And the thing that I really hate about Allen key ones, oh yeah, the fact that I lose the Allen key. So this is my jigsaw, and when it was coming time to look at all these, I'm like, I know this has an Allen key somewhere on it. And I'm looking around, I'm like, I guess it doesn't have one. And then I found out, oh, it went here, but it wandered off at some point. So I hate tools that need tools, because if you lose those other things, that's it. So that stinks. It's also really difficult to use an Allen key, get it to the right thing. You're going to have to hold something so that you're getting it to the right angle. It's just, you need 8 hands. So all the Makitas, boo, as well as the BOSCH 180 right here, pretty bad. Then we start moving into honorable mention. So this BOSCH requires the use of an Allen key, so the 50, and it actually has a really good Allen key holding system. It has 2 rubber gaskets on it, so it's actually easy to get the Allen key out, but it seems like it's going to stay really well. Also, when you take off the foot plate and you have to adjust this, the gauge on most of these is back here. So you're like looking at this while you're turning this over here, and you know, too many places at once. At least on this one, the gauge is right next to the nut. So while you're tightening it, you can be looking where you need to look. So this one, I'm doing this instead of this weird motion. So still on the bad side. I would really love to see this have a lever, but it at least moves a little bit up in this direction. Now we move into the Fantastics and slightly less. So on the Fantastic ones, we definitely have the D-handle Milwaukee. Oh man, this is the best, period. Because it has such an easy lever to just move. And then what's beautiful about it, and we'll get a really good up close on this, is that it has all these standard detents with a little post. So, you know, we're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 detented spots. So, I mean, it's so easy to just flip this lever, move it to the angle that you want to, and lock the lever down again, and you're ready to go. I mean, perfect execution. Excellent job on this. I really, really like that. So, this is phenomenal. I question why, because these are a pair. They were released at the exact same time. This one has the exact same detent structure, but you have to use an Allen key to turn it. So that's disappointing. I'm sure it's because of the compact nature of the barrel that they couldn't fit that mechanism in here, but I really wish they would have. But the saving grace is those detents. So at least with this one, this is what I would consider the best Allen key version. Is I loosen it with the Allen key, I can move the detent, it'll stay in the detent, and I just tighten it up and I'm done. So for that note, okay, good. It deserves to be up here at the top. In a little bit of a different function, this Dewalt is really good too, and you know those types of things that bring you a little bit of satisfaction? This has that. So when I flip the lever and I move this unit, you'll hear it click. So it has positive detents or positive stops in this case, and it has a clicking motion and it just slides into it. So you know I'm in a 45, I'm in a 22.5, I'm in a 15, I'm at the 90. So that one is really cool too, and I really like that. So this D handle, I'd probably put it in its second place right behind, or even tied for first, with the Milwaukee D handle. Now, just like how this barrel didn't have 100% of that function, the Dewalt doesn't have the same function either. Now, it does have a lever, so awesome. Very happy that we have a lever. But it doesn't have that same clicky style of detent selection. This one just has a gauge in the back, and there are 3 positive detents that you can insert this into, 90 and 40. So, you know, less feature rich than the other ones, but it still has a lever, and the lever is really what's key. So when we look at this field, the winners are definitely the D handles for the Dewalt and the Milwaukee. Let's go ahead and get into some of our testing that we did with actual materials, and then we'll come back to some more feature stuff. In one of the main features of a Jig Saw is using it to cut laminate flooring. They even make laminate flooring blades for these Jig Saws. So we used all of the exact same laminate flooring blades. They were all Bosch that we used for each one of these. And, you know, we wanted to put it through to see if we were going to get tear out. A laminate blade cuts on the downstroke, so it wants any damage to go down, not up, because up is where you're visually going to see that piece of laminate flooring. But what happens with those types of blades is you can have a chip out occurrence that damages that flooring. So we cut all of these pieces of laminate with the same speed on all of these jigs, and we did see a difference in our cuts. And so the cleanest cuts that we saw across the board were from these 2 Makitas, the barrel and the J04. These guys had incredibly clean cuts all the way through, no chip out, no bars, it was great. We also had a really great cut from the newer BOSCH, which is the 50. That one had an incredibly clean cut as well. Everybody else in the middle section, they did great. They had a little bit of chip out, a little bit of tear, but nothing too serious. We did see there were clear brand losers, which was the two Milwaukees had horrible chip out all the way through on all of their cuts. What could be attributed to this is maybe that brand might have more power behind it. Or it might be a different design in the way that they're making the blade go up and down, and that small little tweak for this particular material type, caused damage in there. So that's the type of thing that, if you do have one of those and you're going to cut with laminate, perhaps you want to maybe play with different settings on there to achieve different results. Now, with each one of these tests, I want to kind of share my knowledge with you too. It might seem like common sense to some people, but you might not have heard this tip before. So with the Milwaukee, and I'll even show like some of these cuts under a microscope so you can see, because the Milwaukees did so bad, afterwards I did what you're supposed to do when you cut laminate, which is put a piece of tape over your cut. So before you mark your laminate for cutting, you should just put a piece of painter's tape or some other non-sticky residue tape right over it, mark your line on the tape, cut it, and on this piece, which I had that Milwaukee cut, when I removed the tape, it was completely clean with only one itty-bitty little chip out piece. So regardless of what jigsaw you have, make sure that when you're cutting laminate, you tape it if at all possible. Our next test for these jigsaws is cutting through ceramic tile. Now, this is something that these jigsaws can do, but there are a lot of better tools for this job. Particularly though, where you would possibly use this jigsaw in cutting is where you're just trying to cut out a small notch, most likely even smaller than this triangle. And that's because this tool can really run through a blade when you're doing this. We used a BOSCH carbide blade for all of these. We gave each one their own individual one, and every single one of these saws was able to complete cutting out this triangle out of tile, except for the Milwaukee and the Dewalt barrels. Both of these, at a certain point, the carbide just completely wore away on the area that we were hitting every single time, and we just could not progress any further through the cut. So they made it through the first cut and they stalled out on the second. So I issued them another blade, and they both got farther the second time, but again, both did not finish out the cut. So maybe it's some sort of way with the way the barrels are doing their oscillation pattern, but it just seemed to wear out this blade quicker than on the other ones. I will not rule out, though, user error on that one, because cutting tile with a jigsaw is actually very difficult. You have to deluge it with water the entire time. These blades heat up really, really, really fast when you're cutting something like tile. And so you have to have a spray bottle there just pouring water on that the entire time that you're going, because otherwise the blade's just going to heat up and it's going to deteriorate very fast. So I won't rule out the fact that possibly I wasn't deluging it enough, but I was definitely trying. So just a good tip for you if you are going to cut tile with one of these jigsaws, and these are really expensive blades. These can be like $20. For it to only last this cut is rough. So make sure before you even start your cut that you pour water over the tile, and then you're continuously spraying the blade and the tile right in front of it with water. I attempted to use the blue goo gel, something that I would use maybe over at the drill press in lieu of using water, and that really did not work for this process. Water is what you want to use. The next material test that we did was cutting thin metal. And what I was looking for when cutting thin metal was, the quality of the cut. Is it clean or is it have a lot of barbs? And did it warp the metal? Did it cause like a rippling effect? Because this saw is ripping the metal up and down. It can cause waves when you're using it. And this test really frustrated me. I conducted this test 4 times through the entire line of all these jigsaws, because after the first time I felt something was off, so I changed my parameters, did it again, changed my parameters, and in the end I do not have results that correlate to each other, so I can't give you any results on that one. I have just tons of metal that I cut up, and I really can't give you an answer. Or at least an answer that I'm comfortable with. So I feel that this needs a more scientific approach to be able to do this test with like a machine that could do it. But here's why I am even talking about it in the first place. There's some takeaways from this one. Number one, tape. Tape, tape, tape. Just like with the laminate, if you put a piece of tape on this piece of metal, it produces a clean cut all the way through. All of these were very jagged except for a few instances, and the instances were very random, so I couldn't pinpoint where they were. But anytime a piece of tape was used, it was perfect. So always put a tape on a piece of metal when you're cutting it. Next is slow. I mean slow, like 100-year-old person on a walker slow. Like you need to move really slow, like just pretend that jigsaw's your walker and move really, really slow. The slower you go, the cleaner the cut will be, hands down. Also, typically you cut metal in a very slow setting, but since this is a very thin metal, if you cut it too slow, the blade is actually going to pull the metal up and down as it goes and cause deformation. So you do want to move it up to maybe more of a medium speed when you're cutting this type of metal. So let's talk price on these. And I don't want to talk price like this is the best budget saw. No, like that isn't part of the equation. There's something that bothers me about the price in here. And that's that over in Bosch, this is around the same price as these. And this is around the same price. And this is around the same price. But when you get over here to Makita, Makita's over $100 more than these. Why is that? That bothers me. Obviously, these were able to accomplish it. I don't feel like it's some Herculean technical feat that requires this one to be more expensive. It seems more like it was a company choice to make this one more expensive. And that stinks because these are the same tool. They perform the exact same action. Neither one of these is way better than the other. And it's just a different form factor. So you're just choosing which ergonomics works better for you. I've spent a lot of time playing with these jigsaws through all these tests, and it's been fun for me because, you know, it's more jigsaw time than I've gotten in a long time, and it's through all these brands. And so I've formed attachments to certain ones of them, and I'm still kind of a D-handle guy. I could obviously choose to keep any of these and use any of these, and there's a couple D-handles that I like the best. So, but that's me, that's my personal preference. So your personal preference might take you somewhere else. So if your personal preference was saying, ooh, I want to buy this one right here, but then you're like, it's $100 more. Like, am I really getting, like, I mean, it's the same as this one. I'm just getting, this one feels more comfortable to me. And then you end up buying this one because it's like, it's $100 more, but you should have been able to buy that one. So knock on Makita on that one. I mean, I'm a Makita guy. I own a lot of Makita. You're a great company, but I don't appreciate the price jab on that one. Another thing to talk about with price, of course, is my sponsor, SafetySourceSupply.com. They're great. They provided all of these to me. And the even better thing for me as somebody who's out here talking to you is they don't care what I say, because all they care about is that you know that they have awesome prices. They sell these brand of tools for up to 50% off. It changes all the time, so check out their site. At the time of this video right now, I know this one's like 47% off, somewhere around there. So if you like this guy, like, that's the place to buy it. Just saying. They don't care what I say in my videos. They provide the stuff, and they're actually really interested to see which ones I like the best, because they're going to then buy more of those next time they buy it around, because they're like, that's a really good saw. Let's go ahead and pump up the numbers over here. So I'm their little guinea pig too, in addition to being able to show you all this stuff. So I love that relationship. I love that company, and you'll love their prices. So make sure you go check out SafetySourceSupply.com. All right, so this test was to see if these tools come 90 degrees out of the box. And it actually turned into something more, which was surprising for me. So basically what I was trying to do was see, okay, when you take it out of the box and you pop it in and you're at the 90-degree detent, is your saw going to be 90 degrees? And for about 50% of these, they weren't. They were just ever so slightly off. So a good word of advice is whenever you get a jigsaw, even if you already own one right now at home, take a square to your jigsaw. see if it's square. It might not be. I always would blame like, oh, you know, these saw blades bend all the time. But I mean, this is a brand new blade that I'm checking for flatness before I do my tests. And so if all of a sudden I'm seeing crookedness, it's not because of the blade, it's because of the unit. So every single one of these jig saws, whether they have a lever or they are the Allen key version, they have an Allen key screw underneath on the base plate. So like right here. And so that is for fine adjustment. Even if you're one that has a lever like this one, it's still there. So when you get one, it's very easy to correct. Go ahead in there and flatten it out. That leads me to the weird thing that I observed, which was after I was like, oh, let me do a part of the test where user error in inserting these, particularly the T-shank versions, because the T-shank versions, you have these little wings, a T on there. So I found that the Milwaukees have a very high error rate when you're inserting this. And then I went and checked online and lots of people complain about it. So if you do select these guys, just bear in mind that when you rotate this, it's a circle that spins, and it's 2 circles. So if you don't push really hard and get this fully down, that wing sticks up too high, and when the circle comes back, it hits it and it creates a crooked blade. So I'm not gonna push it real hard right now to make it happen. Boom. So my blade's going this way right now. So if you have either of these types of jigsaws, you do have to be mindful that you have to really push hard down so that it stays straight. So once I did that, I decided, okay, let me do it 10 times and see how many times I screw it up. So every time I would do it, I would then take my square to it just to see, and like right now I'm perfectly square. So I know I'm good. Well, every once in a while, I started getting a weird result, so it wasn't that it spun, which would be caused by that T-shank getting hit, like right now. And I'll get an up-close part on this. It is ever so slightly off square, diagonal, like it didn't twist, but now it's kind of to the side. The spinning mechanism shouldn't cause that. And so if I was doing a very important cut on a serious project, I would slightly be cutting at an angle than what I believe that I'm cutting at. So take away from that, again, if it's something super important, check. Now, maybe I'm just being over the top. You wouldn't, like, Justin, you're not gonna go check and see if a demo saw is 90 degrees straight. You are right. So take it for what it's worth. I'm just trying to relay the information that's out there. I actually ended up calling Milwaukee Corporate. I talked to customer service, and then they put me over to their tech department to talk about it. Their verdict was these must be defective units, and I should send them back in or take them to a service center. So I drove to a service center yesterday because I wanted to talk to people and whatnot. And unfortunately, the service center, they just ship it off to corporate anyway. They were like, we're not going to fix it here. I don't really have anything to tell you. So I decided not to. When I came back, I really dug in and started doing 10 times on every single one of these, and it happens a lot on the Dewalt. Again, it's not fully inserting to twist, it's actually putting it at a slight angle, and usually it happens to the right. All of these have lever action that go in that direction, so it's something in the mechanism that causes it to go off. So in the end, I did not see it in the Makitas or the BOSCHs, but I saw it in these guys. And so just something to keep in mind. It's something that I, discovered and wanted to point out. And so, having a square on hand, if it's something vitally important that you really feel you gotta to have a straight blade 100%, definitely make sure you check it before you cut. Well, since we're talking about blades, let's talk about the blade locking mechanism on all of these. I've divided them into 4 groups here. So this group is that little itty bitty lever that I don't like. Now on this Makita, I don't mind it as much, but it's still probably one of the most inconvenient ways out of the group in order to add or release the blade. You have to get in there and hit this little itty bitty thing with the tip of your finger. That goes for all 3. Then you have this grouping right here where you have a large lever action that opens it up. And they're all slightly different. Typically it's meant to be grabbed with your right thumb and pushed over, right thumb and pushed over, right thumb and pushed over, right thumb and pushed over. Now if you're a lefty, more awkward. And I had my son who's a lefty try it out. And yes, it's a child, but it's just a lever. So, you know, I asked him, was this comfortable or no? And he said no. The two Milwaukees, they have a button that travels right to left all the way around. That's spring action. So this is a little bit, it's basically the same thing, right thumb going this way. But, you know, you can point it at you and go left thumb. And then you have this different one, which, you know, I'm not even saying that this is better. I would say this group is good and these are inconvenient, which is this neat action right here where you're just putting your finger in and pulling it out. A lefty could turn it upside down and it would be pretty comfortable. This is an action that you do all the time. So these guys have gotten it right. Makita and BOSCH right here. Like BOSCH has changed over. This is, nope, that's not a BOSCH. This is the BOSCH. This is one of BOSCH's newer ones and it has a large lever. So I'm hoping they're going to continue down this path over this guy over here. Although, yes, and they did the guard like this as well. So hopefully we're traveling this way and leaving this stuff behind because ease of use is always better. Let's talk about the plastic accessories and how you should have no bearing on your decision-making process. You're going to lose them right away, all of them. So I give the manufacturers an A for effort that they're trying to add some innovations and stuff, but these clear plastic guys are bad. And what's worse is that you're not including a home for them to live in. When you have a jigsaw that requires an Allen key to change the bevel, you made a home for that Allen key so it could live on the tool. You did not create a home for any of these products for when it's not in use. I mean, do you have anything in this handle right here? Couldn't you just make a little slit in there that I could slide this guy into? Something. Could it be under the plate? Make a little hidden hidey hole in here, and so I take the plate off and oh, I can pick from my different things and then put it on again. I came up with two really easy ways to do it just off the top of my head, just throwing it out there to you, the manufacturers. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because you're not going to use these most of the time. The Dewalt's is the worst. It is ultra flimsy and it doesn't want to stay in. So as soon as you start using it, it flies off. I've attempted to use all of these throughout all of my testing. This one is the one that flies off. So this one, no bueno. This guy over here, now all of these are anti-splinter plates. So they act just like on your table saw, how you put a zero clearance plate there. It adds extra support next to the blade where it's cutting. And so that helps prevent some more tear out. Rather than it lifting up the wood and going like this, there's something holding it there so it can't go like that. On the Makita one, it's not flush with your surface, it's up. And so you're not gonna, it doesn't do anything. The only way it does something is if you take off your protective boot, and now if you're doing fine woodworking, you're gonna scratch up your stuff all over the place. If you're a construction worker and you're doing dimensional lumber and stuff, you're not using that in the first place. So, you know, that one to me is silly. This one is bad. These for the Milwaukee, these are ultra flimsy with little itty bitty tabs that you have to push in. This is going to break right away. They do have a thick anti-splinter one. I'll give you that one. And it does snap in and it does have a cool little arrow. So if I had to say best in class, it would be this one. But again, like one little knock when you're not watching and it goes flying and it's gone. So that's why we all lose these all the time. On the BOSCH has one of the other worst things. Their anti-splinter plate, very good, very thick, locks in place. I do think you've done a very good job in this. Give me a home for it and I'll be singing your praises. This piece is super bad and here's why. It goes on this particular jig, their newest, the 50. And this is the one that now has the handle that I like to release the blade. But if you insert this on here, Okay, which I have horribly mangled this a couple times and gotten it stuck in there, so it has a weird push in. But if I then go and hit this button, it either sends this flying or it gets stuck and mangled in here. You have to remove this every single time you're going to do a blade change. So that means I'm never going to use it because you're constantly doing blade changes on these guys. So go with a button more like, while I don't like these for the Milwaukee, once they're on, come on, get in there. There we go. Okay, so once it's on, I can release the blade and it didn't have to come off. So figure out a different mechanism that, you know, everything works together without having to remove stuff. That's my piece on these. I'm not a fan, if you can't tell, of these little accessory guys. Keep trying though. Like, we want these good accessories to come with it, but they aren't there yet. Lights are very important on tools. There's a reason why we have lights on everything now. It really does come in handy so that you can see what you're doing. So we're gonna go from worst to best. And worst has to be the Dewalt D, and that's because it has no light on it. How do we not have a light on this tool? I really like this Jig Saw out of the whole crowd, but then it has stupid stuff like that where there's no light on it. And so even when, you know, it really kind of brings you down a little bit when it doesn't have maybe not important for function, but definitely important to see. So I see a light as a very important feature on my jigsaws, and so not having it really hurts it. So bottom of the barrel for this test. Then we go on to everybody else, and I would say acceptable / dim would be the Makita and BOSCH D handles, and then we get up to the best ones. And the best ones were by far the two Milwaukees. They were excellent. It puts a giant bright surface everywhere and it really stretches out. These really pump out the light. On the Makita and the BOSCH, they were also very bright and extended out, but they had obstructions either from their guard or from motions from the saw, and it would cause shadows while you're using the tool, which could be distracting. And so that's a little annoying because, you know, you're trying to focus and you see this line moving around and stuff. So the Dewalt was kind of in between the goods and the best. So I would kind of tilt it that way. But by far, these Milwaukees have the best lights of the group. I saved the test that I was most excited about for last, and that was testing the oscillation. And so I had a large hardwood slab that was provided to me by John from mill2make.com. Check him out. He's not a sponsor or anything, just a nice guy that sells custom live edge slabs that he mills himself here in New Jersey. So if you're in New Jersey, check him out. He also does some woodworking as well. So I just wanted to give him a plug. This had some really interesting results. So I'm going to go by groupings just so we can handle a little easier. The Makitas performed weirdly, and I would probably say towards the bottom. When I was looking through, or what I was hoping was going to happen during this test for everybody did not happen, which was like a nice even progression. The more you engage this setting, the more you see tear out, the more you see a bigger oscillation in the saw. So with the Makitas, they had a very clean first cut and second cut, and then the third cut went terribly wrong, and it was just, on all three, was just rough, slowed the saw so slow. But then at 4, it kicked back up again. And that happened on all three. So it wasn't like a particular one, and it wasn't that I hit a particular spot in the wood. All three had the exact same reaction. So I almost wonder if it has an over-exaggerated circle as it's going along. Once I hit the 4th one, I was getting lots of stalls and kicks as I was cutting through it. It was not a smooth cutting experience. Then we go to the Milwaukees. The Milwaukees probably had the cleanest of all the cuts all the way through, but they were also incredibly slow after setting 1. And I almost think that there was very little change from setting 1 to setting 4. These are also the only saws that had burning occur during the test. No other saws had burning. These had active smoke and burning when they were cutting, which was interesting. It was very slow, and so when you're in the same spot cutting for the same amount of time, you're going to burn. And so that occurred here. The DeWalt's, I would probably say the DeWalt's won, if we had to say it. The DeWalt's made incredibly clean cuts. They had the least amount of tear out, but it was a progression. So on both saws, you could see as you ramp up that number, you're going to get a little bit more tear out as it goes. And at no time during the test on any of the settings did either of these saws slow down. And so that was, these guys have power, which is nice. Over on the Bosch, they have also the best and the worst. So this, the 50, the newest of the three saws, this one did very good too, and I would lump it in with the DeWalt's as like these three were the best in the test. Very clean, nice progression, lots of power. This guy was definitely the worst, the barrel. I mean, bad. The amount of tear out from cut 1 through 4 was just extreme all over the place. It was slow, super underpowered, and so I definitely put this guy at the bottom. But the D's did very good, with this one being one of the ones that I would consider the top. So it was really interesting to see that some of these saws I would trust using this feature, like these, and then other saws, and even this one, but then like these saws, I wouldn't trust this feature at all. And actually, since this is mine, and I've already said I only either use it either on setting 1 or setting 4, I don't ever use the stuff in between. Obviously, I came to that conclusion through some experience because, woo, I don't want to use setting 2 or 3 on this one. It's very unpredictable. So I really, really like these three guys right here. All right, Justin, this video's been going on forever. Let's wrap it up. Okay, so I'm going to just go down jig by jig real quick as just a final thing. There's still some things I didn't get to cover, so I'm going to point out a couple individualized things on each one of these jigsaws, either good or bad, just so if you're looking at this particular model, you will have some things to go off of. On the Makita J04, this has a lock mechanism button on here. Personally, it annoys me a lot, but some people will find this to be a really nice feature because it prevents auto start. So you have to first hit this button before you can engage the trigger, so you're not going to accidentally do something. It's a safety feature. This has really great viewing angles on this saw. It's very easy to get to the release button on this. I don't like the release button, but at least it's very easy to access. Overall, it has a trigger limiter. There's only 2 of these on here that have trigger limiters, and they're really cool. So what that does is you have this adjustable trigger where the more you squeeze it, the faster your jigsaw goes. Well, this will limit how fast that can go. So if you put it to number 3, you can, based on how you squeeze the trigger, either have it go really slow at 1, 2, and then 3, but even if you completely depress it, it will never go higher than 3. So having a limiting wheel on a D handle is very, very nice. Using the Allen key for the bevel is poor. The barrel, we also have the button. This is one of the only ones that's ambidextrous, which is nice. My son found that a lefty could easily activate this with no problem. This guy, again, though, with these buttons, it can be annoying. I find it annoying for me, but other people will find it as a nice safety feature. The handle on the top is really ergonomic. It has like a ring almost around it, so it makes it really nice to hold, and the body is not interfering with your arm. So, you know, decent saw. My current guy right here, the old one. So this has been around for 2 years. This is your basics. You don't find a lot of frills on it. It has an Allen key based bevel system, but it does have some positive stops on it, which is nice, but it's still an Allen key system, so not as good. It is a fairly decent, like standard jigsaw. The Dewalt barrel. I'm going to put up on the screen right now, this has a symptom where if you back up when cutting, it can cause the blade release to literally like swing around, make a ton of noise, and it's even known to shoot the blade out. So there is a design flaw in that mechanism. So that is something to be of concern. It does have great viewing angle based on this front right here, and the beveling system on it is pretty nice, especially because it's a lever, so that really earns it some points. But this back half right here, it hits my wrist when I'm using it, and that makes it a little bit uncomfortable for me. The 331 D handle. Now this is their older one. They have a newer one that just came out to replace this, but I wasn't able to get it for this video. My local store did not have it. It's changed some of its front to that blade release, and so I'm interested to see if the visibility has been cut down, because the visibility on this is awesome. The blower on this stinks, but this also has some of the most awesome beveling system. I love that. So there are a real lot of nice features about this one. Spoiler, if I had to pick one, I think it'd be in my top 3. So I'm not going to pick one out of here, but I would say this is in like my top 3. I would pick 3 out of here, and this is in that group. This is also a brushed. It's not a brushless, but it still has a lot of power, and that's because this is the older model. The newer model of this might even kick it all the way up to the top. Who knows? The Milwaukee barrel. It has an automatic, so over here you can control the speed of it. All of the barrels have a speed dial. I did not point that out yet, but all of the barrels have a speed dial, and that is one of the features that draws some people over to barrels, because they set it and forget it. Based on the material that they're cutting, they don't need to change, the speed that they're going to. This also has an automatic, so it will start soft and then ramp up as needed with it. The power buttons are very inconvenient on this one. It is ambidextrous, so you have power buttons on both sides, but you have to hold it for 3 seconds as like a lock system, but they're really far forward. I have very large hands. Extra large gloves can be small on me. So for me to have to like really reach out for this means that a lot of people might have a hard time with starting this one. I would also point out too that this guy is not ambidextrous with start, and it is difficult for a lefty to start this one. The D handle of the Milwaukee. I would say it has one of the best, if not the best, beveling feature, period. It has dust collection. It has a decent, powerful blower. It has a great button in the front. I would say that this is a very good all-around jigsaw, and I would also put that in my top 3. The older 180 Bosch. This guy is very much your standard jigsaw. It does have power. It did perform on tests very well, but it seems to be a little feature lacking. You have to use an Allen key in order to adjust the bevel. It has this horrible, horrible guard in the front that really annoys me so much that it's such a small thing, but it really knocks it down for me, at least. You have to decide what's important for you and your use cases, but that really knocks it down for me. The barrel, performance-wise, has been lacking. It has a dial back here, and I have, while using the saw several times over the past week, hit this. So this is the only saw with a dial that I have hit during activation that has changed the speed on it. So bear that in mind. This also has no beveling feature to it whatsoever. It is a fixed base, which is unfortunate. Also, you turn on the light with this depressed rubberized button back here, and it's weird, like I will push it and expect it to stay on and it'll just turn off again. You have to really hit it really hard to get it to stay on or stay off. It is a very small size. in my hand, it's very small. So this could be one of the smallest jigs out of everything. So they kind of put their thought into more engineering it, you know, like Apple. They want to make the tightest thing, but then you can't fix it because they made it in the smallest package possible. And then we come to the 50. This has a limiter dial on it. So this is a D handle with a trigger that has a varying speed, but you can limit your speed with that. That is super nice. It has a decent blower. It has a good blade. It has, as I recall, yes. So this is an Allen key bevel, but it does have at least the numbers in there. So it's still not good, but at least it's something better than like some of the other ones. I actually do find this one to be in my top 3 as well. However, it's like the lowest of the top 3 maybe. Also, one other thing though, to come back to this, even though this one's in my top 3, this one has no light, and that really irks me. Like, how does this is the only one without a light out of all of them? That upsets me, even though I really, really like this one. I will almost pick this one as my top one, but the problem is, even in my top 3 here, they all have something a little off with them that's disappointing. Maybe 1 or 2 little things. So none of them are perfect. It's really, even when you put everything together, none of them is perfect. These 3 are powerful saws too. So, you know, if you're watching one of those other videos that really go over them, these aren't bad from a power perspective, and then they are feature rich, but they have some things and not other things. So in the end, I really wanted to just feed you lots of information on these guys. So I'm not telling you which ones to buy. You know, you might be stuck in, well, I don't want to stay stuck. You might have chosen to be like in this platform or the Makita platform. So you might be taking what you saw from these to then choose which one you're going to pick from out of this platform. So hopefully I was able to give you a little bit more of a in-depth overview of some of the more minuscule stuff that makes up these jigsaws. So I hope you got some good new info on all of these jigsaws, that you're going to be able to take the info from this video and add it to all the usual info from the other videos, and now have a good complete understanding of what all these jigsaws have to offer, their little quirks, their differences in feature functions. I spent over a week on all the things on here, and I filmed so much more than I showed, but I was really just trying to find good information and wean it down. This is my first big head-to-head type of video that I've looked at, and it's not really a head-to-head, is it? But I want to say a special thank you to SafetySourceSupply.com, my sponsor. They provided all these jigsaws for this video. They really helped me start this channel, if you don't know it. Before I even had a channel, I was buying stuff from their website. They had great prices, and I was leaving video reviews for them in the comments section and making sure that I was saying like, yo, this website's legit, like this was really cheap and it's a brand new tool, because I wanted to put it out there. It's not your usual website that you're buying from, like Home Depot or Amazon or something. And so I wanted people to know, like, this is a good, reputable place to buy from. And so then they contacted me and said, hey, would you make some videos for us? You know, we can supply stuff for you. Maybe you want to make a YouTube channel. Okay, cool. So it's a big thanks to them. So thank you so much, SafetySourceSupply.com. Make sure you guys go check them out. I hope you like and subscribe to the video, and stay safe in the shop. I'll see you in the next one.